Hi, I'm Sarah. And my research project was on the status of culturally important species on and off Indigenous territories in Canada and the US. So to me, first I'll give you a little background on me and why I thought this was important. I love nature. I spend almost every day outside, and I love learning about conservation and wildlife biology. And, you know, yeah. Uh, but what are our issues and why is this important? Nature is under a big threat. Obviously, you hear this every day. You can't walk outside without someone telling you that the entire planet is gonna essentially die, and it's very stressful. Take that from me. I stay up many nights just thinking about how, animals are dying and mass extinctions and blah, 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 But Indigenous cultures believe that man is one with the earth and we are one with nature as we are, because obviously before all of our technological advances, we were living outside, we've evolved from primates, and therefore we are one with nature. But Judeo-Christian beliefs, which tend to be obviously the big beliefs that we're all led to follow, separate the two, with man being superior. So that comes with this big superiority thing, that nature is less than you and it's not as important as you, which is obviously odd because you come from nature. But this led me to my hypothesis that population numbers would be healthier on native reserves. How did I conduct my research? We did a literature review, but obviously this is, the topic itself is called ethnobiology, how people interact with animals and interact with nature. And there's not too much research on it. It's not like a super huge field. So not much came up in my literature review on population numbers. A lot of it came up in biodiversity, which is also a very important thing to look at when you're doing this kind of thing, but nothing really was able to help. So what then we went into was a way to find data and do it ourselves. So we use the Living Planet Index, which is like, it's a thing made by WWF, and basically it just has numbers of populations from people who have been various different places who have been calculating and watching these populations as time goes on. So like park rangers. And what I did with this was I took where these populations were from. They have a map. You can zoom in like down to the exact coordinates of it. And I put this with reservation maps and found which of these were on reservations and Indigenous reservations. Most of my data actually ended up coming from Canada and not as much the US. But the governments of Canada and the US both have reservation maps that are very, like, you can just look them up and you can find them. So I was able to go through the maps and put these with and match them up with the Living Planet Index to find my numbers on versus off of these reservations. Our data came out inconclusive, actually. There was, if you look at the growth rate comparison in this little bottom one, can I, wait, hold on. No, I can't do my little thingy. But if you look at the growth rate comparison in the little bottom graph chart thing, you'll see that a lot of it just is very different on and off Indigenous territories. Well, mostly it looks like it tends to lean more towards Indigenous territories. Really, there's not too much conclusive data there. Also, these animals were found by contacting people who work on Indigenous and Native religions, looking up articles and stuff like that. So these are just kind of basic animals that are central to North America and tend to be important in these religions. But yeah, nothing too much came up. On the birds, it was actually really hard to find numbers on these birds because they move so far. I mean, they fly and they migrate. So it's really hard to get like steady numbers on a lot of these birds. So the birds I actually didn't find any data for, but the mean growth rate obviously shows that it was very different. But I believe that comes from bison, because if you look at the data for bison, it is staggeringly different. But yeah, so that's how our data came out, but it's still important. So what does this mean? Well, our research came out inconclusive. Indigenous practices of conservation are still important. Superiority of man is harmful to conservation, and we need to learn how to treat the earth in a more natural way. If I had more time to work on a research project, I'd find better ways to collect and hold data, as well as work directly with Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. This would help because obviously it's kind of hard to get numbers from everyone. And when you're just trying to find them on the internet, it's not gonna like come out as well. But if I was able to conduct my own research and actually put money into this, that is what I would do. But yeah. And now we'll talk about my mentor. I had a great time working with my mentor. Her name is Dr. Emma Hudgens. There she is. She's very beautiful. She works in invasive species ecology. She's a postdoc student at Carleton University. I think that's what it's called. But she got her doctorate in biology from McGill. She was super sweet. And I actually also want to talk about this. I heard like 5 different people say this, that they were having a hard time telling their mentors when they were having issues with things. And I'm a big procrastinator. So when I was having issues, I would not tell Emma. I would try to figure them out by myself, or I would just ignore them until our next meeting. And then I would have to be like, oh yeah, I didn't really get that, but I'll figure it out. But eventually I was like, okay, that's dumb. Like if I keep doing this, my project's not going to keep going on. So I brought it up to her, and then she was like, that's silly, I'll help you. And she was a lot of help. She was so sweet. We would show each other our cats on Zoom while we talked. But she was overall so amazing. And she's so smart, and she was so helpful. She actually had one of her teachers had done data very similar, or had done research very similar to what we were learning or what I was looking into. And she was able to help me and give me that for my research. So here are my final remarks. If you want more info, you can ask me questions. My Instagram is Sarah A. Duguay. I post very good pictures. I'm just kidding. But a very important thing is to look into native methodologies that are used in your area. So if you want to use this, because everyone can help preserve the environment and help our animals, you can look into these methodologies, because a lot of native cultures are actually helping in conservation. If you know policies, and this was the big overarching reason for this research, and why I think it's important, is because diversity in conservation is super important. Because if you're having the opinions of one type of person again and again in conservation, you're not going to get the kind of things that you need to think of. So a very well-known example of this is when picking up feathers off the ground is illegal. And when that was imposed, and when they put that bill out in America, they actually had to fix it in the 1950s. So native cultures could still use these feathers to make headdresses and ceremonial things, but they do it as sustainably as possible. So what I advise for you to do is do your own literary research on native species and how you can help. We all need to share methods to learn about how to protect our ecosystems. And that is it, I believe.